Okay, it's 12:32, and hello all. For those of you who've been to our Audubon page turning before, you know that we love to be prompt. It's starting right at 12:30, so it's 12:32. Hello all, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Marika van der Steenhoven, and I'm the Special Collections Education and Outreach Librarian here at the Bowdoin College Library, and I'm joined today by... Hi, I'm Pat Steffa, the Department Director. And again, we're so delighted to welcome you here for our final page turning of the 2020 season. The Audubon page turnings will continue again on the first Friday of the month in 2021. We're still lining up speakers, but you can register for all of the page turnings on our news and events website, which I'll pop a link into the chat in just a moment. Those will be commencing on February 5th in 2021. So we're taking January off, but we hope you will join us again next year. Since today's program is in the webinar format, you can go ahead and submit your questions via the Q&A forum, which is in the bottom toolbar across your screen throughout the program. And then I'll be moderating those when we get to that point in the program. So an overview of just what's gonna happen today is I'm gonna give a brief introduction to our program and to our speaker today. Then Kat and I are going to actually flip the bird or flip the page of Audubon's double elephant folio, Birds of America, and we will pass it over to our guest speaker, who today is Jacqueline L. Scott. So throughout this past summer, as it became clear that this would really be an unprecedented semester, I spent a lot of time reflecting on the dual pandemics, the COVID-19 pandemic and the ongoing pandemic of systemic racism in our country and in our community. What might public programming look like in this atmosphere? How might we serve our community and amplify underrepresented voices? I have long been grateful that the Audubon page turnings have become a site to foster community and to discuss art and literature, the environment, and the devastation of climate change. And I'm really grateful that so many of you reached out to suggest programming that would interrogate Audubon as a man with ties to slavery, as well as to recognize the racism and discrimination faced by Black birders. I'm grateful to this community for demanding to engage. And specifically thanks to Professor of Art History, Susan Wegner, who introduced me to the writing of today's guest speaker. Today's program is in concert with other offerings we've made this semester. Book artist Maureen Cummins' use of historic and archival materials to challenge dominant and racist narratives, and alumna and sociologist Pamela Zabala's talk looking at the history of racial bias incidents throughout Bowdoin College's history. These programs, if you've missed them, are available via our website. And again, I'll pop a link to that in the chat. Programming like this will be an ongoing and iterative initiative as a way to provide context for interrogating all of our collections and the work that we do through the lens of racial and social justice. I'm so delighted to introduce today's speaker. I'm really grateful for her time and her willingness to join us today. Jacqueline L. Scott is a PhD student at the University of Toronto. Her research focuses on how to make outdoor recreation more welcoming for Black people. You can find Jacqueline on Twitter at BlackOutdoorsOne. And thank you so much for joining us today, Jacqueline. We're so delighted to welcome you to a virtual Bowdoin College and to our to our Audubon page turning tradition. So I'm going to switch my camera view over to the actual Birds of America edition that's here in our reading room in Brunswick, Maine. And once we turn the page, Jacqueline, you should just feel free to take on over. So we're saying goodbye to the beautiful painted finch. And we're welcoming the rice bird. Jacqueline, it's all you. Oh, sorry, you'll just need to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so thanks Marika and Bowdoin College for inviting me for this page turning of Audubon's Birds of America to the rice bird, also called the bobolink. I've called my talk From Audubon to Birdwatching While Black. I will use this month's bird, the rice bird, to explore what happens when race and bird watching intersect. And I'll do so by talking about three things: rice, Haiti, and the Twitter hashtag Blackbirders Week. First, let me acknowledge that the land on which I stand is Indigenous land. In Toronto, it's bounded by Treaty Number 13 between Indigenous nations and the Canadian government. Let me now talk about rice. I was initially struck by the name of the bird, the rice bird. Rice is not native to the Americas, and so it puzzled me how the bird got that name. Rice is native to only two places in the world: Asia and Africa. African rice once made the US rich. The Carolina gold rice or the Carolina plantation rice generated more dollars than growing cotton. The demand for the rice was so great that it spawned rice plantations in South America. The same rice fed the people in the Caribbean. But rice is not native to the Americas, so how did it arrive here? It did so via the slave ships. In her book, Black Rice, Judith Carney writes about how African farming technology, African rice grains, and African labor made the US rich. White plantation owners knew nothing of growing rice. It's not a native crop to Europe either. But they did know lots about making money, and they had the guns and the cannons to enforce their way. Therefore, Carolina plantation owners sent ships to the rice growing region of Africa, West Africa, to import enslaved people who had the necessary rice skills and technical know how. The rice bird has a long migration, flying from its winter home in South America and the Caribbean to its spring breeding grounds in North America. Along the way, it learned that it could feast on this new crop called rice. The birds were so predictable and numerous that they were named after the new crop. Audubon writes that the birds were a delicacy on the already fat tables in the plantation big houses. I hope the enslaved workers admired the birds. Perhaps the yellow patch on the nape of the male reminded them of the warmth of the sun. Perhaps they too feasted on the birds, a welcome addition to their thin diets. And they hoped that they too one day would fly free. The second thing I'm going to talk about is Haiti. John James Audubon was born in Haiti in 1785, yet he liked to insist that he was American born. His white father owned a large sugar plantation in Haiti. The race and the status of his mother is still uncertain some 200 years later and still talked about. Audubon would have seen the rice birds in the land of his birth. Audubon came to the US to escape the aftermath of the Haitian Revolution. He was not a penniless immigrant, forced to pull himself up by his bootstraps. He came with enough coins in his pocket to start his own business at Mill Grove and to buy enslaved people to work there. Audubon's dream was to paint every bird in North America. He managed to paint some 450 of them. It is an astonishing feat. His paintings are marvelous. They have energy, are vibrant, and they also have a pretty good sense of humor. I happen to really like them. Audubon visited Canada in 1833 to paint more birds. It's the same year that slavery was abolished in the British Empire, including Canada. The Haitian Revolution had done the heavy lifting in freeing the slaves. It is the only successful slave rebellion in history. C.L.R. James' book, The Black Jacobins, is an excellent account of Toussaint Louverture and the other leaders of the Haitian Revolution. As Audubon walked the woods of Louisiana to paint his birds, it would have felt very familiar to him. Enslaved Black people laboring in the fields, white people dancing in the big house, and the French Creole culture, just like Haiti. Haiti, the island Napoleon called the Pearl of the Caribbean. The Haitian sugar industry made so much money for France that once it was lost, the French had no use for their American colony, hence the Louisiana Purchase. Haitians paid in blood to liberate themselves. They spent the next 200 years paying in gold to France as the price of that freedom. Haiti is poor today because of that continuing exploitation. The third and last thing I want to talk about is Black Birders Week. I'm sure you're familiar with the story of Christian Cooper. This expert birder was birdwatching in New York Central Park when he asked a white woman to obey the painted signs and put her dog on a leash. Ground nesting birds were around. She called the police, saying her life was being threatened by an African American man. Cooper captured the incident on his cell phone, and when it was posted on social media, it went viral. I'm a bird watcher. I'm also a researcher exploring how race shapes outdoor recreation, conservation, and what I'm going to call environmentalism. I work in fields that are various shades of white, white, and more white. The Christian Cooper incident happened this summer, the same time that George Floyd was murdered by a policeman kneeling on his neck for almost 9 minutes. It didn't matter to the police that he was being filmed. 9 minutes is a long time to crush a man's throat so that he can't breathe. It was also the summer of Breonna Taylor, asleep in her own bed, her life ended by police bullets in her own home. And there are so many others that I can no longer keep track, but their families do every single day. Fear of race-based violence is part of the cognitive map of Black people in outdoor recreation. And that term comes from Carolyn Finney in her excellent book, Blackfaces, White Spaces. What that means is that we're forced to look over our shoulders in the woods, in the wilderness, in the city parks, in the national parks. It's not so much the bugs and the animals that we fear. It's the white people. Birding is one of the most popular nature-based activities. It's cheap, it can be done close to home, it appeals to women and men, and I think bird watching is a really lovely way to teach children about nature. But bird watching is also a racialized hobby. What that means is that the birding clubs are mostly filled with white people. They go into woods that are seen as white spaces. Birding ecotourism is also a white space filled with white tourists calling the shots, while it's the brown and the Black guides who do the heavy work, just as they have always done. But when Black birders show up in these spaces, our presence is seen as a surprise, like we're intruders. Dr. Drew Lanham is an ornithologist, and he wrote the 9 Rules for Black Birders about a decade ago. One of them was, don't bird in a hoodie, ever. That was for Trayvon Martin, a Black teen killed while wearing a hoodie. In a recent update, Dr. Lanham added, road runners don't get gunned down for jogging through neighborhoods, do they? That was for Ahmaud Arbery, a Black man killed while outside running. Black people love bird watching too. Instead of waiting for white birding clubs and organizations to welcome us, we're helping ourselves. We're doing so using social media. We're no longer isolated as bird nerds. Well, mostly. We're finding each other. In How Racism Takes Place, George Lipsitz writes about turning segregation into congregation. Black people did that with Black Birders Week. It started as a hashtag on social media to support Black bird watchers such as Christian Cooper. The hashtag went viral. We're using it to turn isolation into congregation. We are building community. Hold on. Catherine McKittrick writes about how race and geography are combined in her book, Demonic Grounds, Black Women and the Cartographies of Struggle. Nature is coded as a white space, and Black people who venture there are seen as out of place. This happens in Canada too, where wilderness and whiteness go together in our land of the great outdoors, the land of the great white north. We are using Black Birders Week to reclaim birdwatching as a Black space, to reclaiming our right to be in nature, to be at peace in the woods, in this land that we share. So many places are named after John James Audubon. Think of all the birding clubs, the schools, the streets, to name just a few. But how many are named after the people that he enslaved? The ones who made his lifestyle possible, including the absolutely magnificent birds of America. I'll end my talk by returning to the rice bird or the bobolink. This bird links race and outdoor recreation in my mind. In its annual migration from over the Americas, it soars always over indigenous lands. Audubon painted it. The enslaved people he owned and those laboring in the rice fields, they saw it too. And I'll watch for the rice bird or the bobolink this spring. And as I do so, I'll say a prayer for all of those who saw it. Haiti led the way, and now we are free too. Sort of. Thank you. Any questions?
Jacqueline, thank you so much for so beautifully bringing together so many of the themes that we've been thinking about and reading about and engaging with here in special collections, and for contextualizing so gorgeously the Audubon for us. I want to remind our participants that you can submit your questions. You can type them right in and I'll read them out loud. That's again via the Q&A icon in the bottom toolbar. So go ahead and submit your questions. And I'll start us out, Jacqueline. I'm curious as to what your favorite bird is and what the bird you sort of most want to see is. I guess your sort of like dream bird sighting.
Favorite bird? Deep fried. Well, yeah, sweet potato fries on the side. Yes.
Yeah. That's so very Audubon of you. I love in his ornithological biography how he includes all of those details about the way the birds taste. It's like a whole, like, a complete encompassing of all the things the bird can do.
Yes. And I don't have a favorite bird. And bird watching is, I spend a lot of time hiking, canoeing, skiing, always outdoors. And I got into bird watching because I really wanted to be able to notice the birds, rather than just says, oh, that's a pretty bird. Let's try to figure out what is it. And I'm at the stage now, too many birding guides. Whenever I travel, the birding guides come with me. I was never going to start life lists, but I find that whenever I travel, inevitably a life list starts. So it's, for me, bird watching is just a sheer curiosity about the world out there. Birds make me happy.
I love that. I have to admit personally, when I started doing the we started doing the Audubon page turning, I didn't care much for birds. And in the 4 years since, my house is now surrounded by bird feeders, and I spend a good part of my morning watching the birds. So we've had some questions come in, well, and some comments. The first is from Nat Wheelwright, who is a recently retired from the college ornithologist. And he says, "Thank you, Jacqueline, for a wonderful, important presentation. Know that when we're free to travel between Canada and Maine, we'd love to have you visit Bowdoin College and bird with us."
Okay, accepted. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's an open invitation. We have another question from Rory that says, "Jacqueline, I like your favorite bird as well, with the dressing. Where do you do most of your bird watching?"
My local patch is a cemetery that's up the street, and I love it there. Well, it's a cemetery, it's peaceful, and yes, it is peaceful. I was up there yesterday and didn't see much. Some robins were around feeding off a tree, and then just out of the corner of my eye, I saw a red-tailed hawk just really glide by on silent wings, and that just made my day. Yeah. And then if I'm not there, then Leslie Spit or Tommy Thompson Park is what used to be a dump site for construction waste, but is now a special birding area in Canada. And I'm often down there, usually at least once a week, looking at birds, cycling. And this winter, part of my goal is to get better at identifying ducks. And I do also want to see an owl. I've never seen one. But down at Tommy Thompson Park, there are lots down there.
Oh, excellent. We have a question from Carl, who says, "You referenced 9 rules of black birding. Could you talk a bit more about this? Thank you."
Check out Dr. Drew Lanham. One of the things that first struck me when I came across his work, where he had said that it's maybe once every decade that he would meet another black birder. And I remember my initial reaction was, no way, you got to be kidding me. And then I sat down and realized that it's once every decade that I've met another black birder.
Wow.
But Black Birders Week has fundamentally changed that. So it's gone from people feeling individually that they're isolated, or in my case, oh, there you go, yet again, the nerd, to no, there are lots of us out there. And because of Black Birders Week, the number of Black and brown birding clubs that are springing up, because the issues everyone faced is usually you're the only one, you don't feel welcome in the space, too many barriers, but suddenly it's like we're forming our own.
I as a programmer, looking kind of broadly at ornithologists and birders, I will say that I noticed that there was just Black Birders Week was just incredible in terms of being able to find and read perspectives and voices on the internet, and it was really remarkable.
And what it has done is spawned a whole ton of Black Things Week, whether it's the marine biologists getting together or the neuroscientists or whatever. And so it's, to me, it's been instrumental. There have been lots of academic papers written around how, following Lipsit's suggestion, we've gone from segregation into congregation, using social media to find each other and to support each other.
It's been so powerful to observe. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm going to bring together 2 questions from both Elida and Janet, who Elida says, "Thank you so much. Do you have a favorite guidebook?" And Janet also thanks you for your powerful talk, and some of the books that you referenced sound interesting. So I guess some of the academic works that you referenced, and then also a favorite guidebook for birding.
Again, I don't tend to have favorites of anything because my interest just happens to be all over the place. So what I've learned is that different guidebooks are good for different things. And so I tend to have a full range of them, scattered if I want to find information, and just pick up what I need from there. And at some point, I'm looking at, I guess the one thing I'm looking out for is a guidebook that's written by a Black person. And I wonder if they would categorize the knowledge differently, if they would interpret things differently. So that's the one thing. And no, I will not be writing it. I'm not a, I do birding for fun.
I'm glad that you're creating those boundaries. It's so easy to do that kind of slide into turning pleasure into work. No, don't do it. Shayna says, thank you so much for this wonderful talk and for joining us. Your talk is a start, and there are so many wonderful, and so are the wonderful resources you mentioned. I always wonder, as a white ecologist, what can we do to be allies and help make the outdoors everyone's space and not just white space?
Well, I think the first thing is actually recognizing that race is a problem, and that the outdoors is not transparent space. It's not neutral space. In this land, you're always walking on indigenous land, and you're always talking about race. But when we see whiteness as raceless, then it becomes difficult to have a conversation about race. So that's the first issue, recognizing race is an issue, and that with race come the histories of race relations between Black people and white people, and what does that mean? That's one issue. Another issue is around, where are the Black people on your staff? Where are the Black people in your birding communities? Because if you don't do the targeted outreach, i.e. build relationships with them, build trust, then we're not going to feel welcome in those spaces. So it takes time to build relationship. It takes time to build trust. But you have to start somewhere. So those are the things that can be done in terms of building allyship.
Wonderful. Thank you. Our final question is from Victoria, who says, Jacqueline, thank you so much for this beautiful, illuminating presentation. What has been the most rewarding part of both your birding experiences and PhD work?
The birding experience, simply by being outside. Birding makes me happy. When I'm outside is when I feel most alive. And no matter what's going on in life, COVID, the PhD stress or anything, when you see the bird that you're not expecting, it just brings a smile to my face. It makes me happy. It puts things in context. And for the PhD, I can say now that I'm really happy with the progress that I'm making, that finally I've been able to figure out how the pieces relate together. And so I can't wait to finish, because there are lots of other projects that I now want to work on. But it's given me an understanding of how race and place and outdoor recreation interact.
Wonderful. I'll have to share with the audience that when I first reached out to you, I addressed my email to Dr. Scott, inadvertently having completed your PhD for you. If only I could have that power. Jacqueline, I want to thank you so much for your time and your perspective and sharing with us and our community today. It is so appreciated, and we're just very, very grateful. I also want to extend a thank you to all of those all of you in the audience for joining us today. We're really grateful that you have continued to engage with our programming here in Special Collections and also with the Audubon page turning. A special thank you as well to Tony Sprague, who has helped us out with the IT throughout the semester and setting up our webinar formats for this kind of unprecedented move from in-person to our virtual world. And I wish you all the very best. I hope that you take care of yourselves and each other, enjoy the outdoors, and be well. And we will see you in 2021. Jacqueline, thank you again, and take care all.
And thank you very much for having me. Take care.